Welcome once again, everybody, to the Nick Saban Show presented by Alpha Insurance. I'm Chris Stewart, filling in for Eli Gold. We introduced him prior to the break, but we welcome back in the longtime meteorologist at Alabama's ABC 3340 and the guy who the show's named for, Coach Nick Saban. Always good to see you, sir. You don't have to wait till morning and watch the Weather Channel and get your oatmeal cream pies. You can get your weather report tonight from James for tomorrow. How about that?
This is our most consistent expert.
Well said.
So, whether we're going to practice inside, outside, is it going to rain? We're going to have rain for the game like 5 days before it ever comes.
Sure.
But I got to say, I got a gift for Coach Saban, a weather radio, Miss Terry. So you'll never miss a warning. Personally programmed by us, okay? Batteries, all you do is plug it up. And in case you do get a warning, this is a reminder of what you do. What do you do, Chris?
Respect the polygon.
Respect the polygon.
There's no question.
So see, I come bearing gifts. Most of these sports guys that come on the show, they don't do this. But I'm come to bear gifts. So thank you for the opportunity to do that.
And we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Coach, how you doing?
Doing all right. Trying to get the players to bounce back. It was kind of a collective disappointment for all of us, the way we played last week. And even though probably didn't play our best, we still, at the end of the game, the last 5 plays of the game, if we make any one of the 5 plays we had an opportunity to make, we still probably would have won the game. So got to respect the players' perseverance in terms of how they compete in the game, but we also have to play with a little more consistency and performance. And I think from a psychological standpoint, I really want the players to be more positive, more aggressive, think about positive things, not have a lot of anxiety about what could go wrong, what could happen, so that, they can have really fun playing, fun competing, play to win. Don't worry about, trying to play to keep from getting beat. And, sometimes I think we have a little bit too much of that, and we're trying to get it fixed.
So, Coach, a lot of what we do is similar. You can get 50 weather forecasts right, and then you get one that's wrong, one that goes wrong. Remember Snowmageddon? That's all they remember is the bad one. How do you mentally, and the same thing in football, you can win 50 games in a row, then you lose one. That's all people remember. How do you condition yourself to get your mind off that loss and move forward?
Well, I think that in sports, and probably in what you do too, you're only as good as your last play. You're only as good as your last game, and you always kind of understand that. So the big thing is can you learn from the things that you didn't do well? And most of the time when things don't go well, people are more interested in, because of the humiliation that goes with that, they're more interested in what can I do to change? What can I do to fix the problems that we had? Because, people don't understand that we want to get it right. Players want to get it right. We want to get it right as coaches. You want to get it right in your profession. So you just stay focused on the details. Logistics, the attention to detail that you have to do anything correctly. And that comes before the game ever comes. It comes before you ever make the prediction that you have to make. And if you do those things right and you prepare the right way, then you should be a lot more confident, when you get into the battle, that you're going to go out there and know exactly what you have to do from a responsibility standpoint, alignment, technique, whatever it is, that's going to help you be successful. And, it's kind of do simple better sometimes. It's not that complicated. And I think sometimes you can get things so complicated in your mind, you can't be free and easy with how you go out there and compete and play. I don't know if that helps you any with the weather, but
it can.
Let's go to the guy that gets it right all the time. We don't have to worry about 50 or 51. He gets it right all the time. He's Pee Wee. He's got our first question from Alabama 811. Call Alabama 811 before you dig. Call 811 or visit al811.com. Pee Wee, you're on with Coach.
What's
Hey,
up,
Coach, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, Pee Wee. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. You kind of touched a little bit on what I wanted to ask, about the players not wanting to, keep them positive. But when you have what you could possibly call it reverse rat poison, where now you're hearing a lot of negative things that's in the press, and a lot of these things are writing about about our players, about the team in general, about you, just putting negative stuff out there about the team. How do you buffer all of that away from the players, or can you?
Well, I try to tell the players I never read or listen to what's written when things are good, and I don't read or listen to things when things are bad, because I think we all have to do a little self-analysis about what do we need to do things better. And somebody else really doesn't know that any better than we do as coaches, or even the players themselves, in terms of what they have to do to correct some of the things will help them play better. But I also think fans should support players. We're not in the entertainment business totally. These guys are college students. They're college athletes. They're going to school to get an education. They're doing the best they can to be the best they can be. They work their tail off. They do it all summer long. They do it in winter conditioning. They did it in fall camp. And I don't think anybody really has any sense of appreciation for how hard these guys work and how hard they try to go out there and have success and win the games and make you happy and make you proud for what they do. And if you have any sort of, appreciation for that, maybe you should be supporting the team and being a good fan and not being somebody out there that's just looking for something to hate about whatever happens. And I think that, so none of that stuff bothers me. We try to make corrections with the players. We try to be positive. You got to have directional teaching. Anybody can complain and about anything. And we can even yell and scream at players, but that doesn't do any good if you don't have directional teaching. If what you're saying to them, however you're saying it, is not teaching them something that's going to help them get better, I think it's, like useless information. So we continue to do that. I think, players were humiliated after the game before they read anything about what anybody had to say about them. And I think that's basically who you are, what kind of competitor you are. And, sometimes when you're a competitor, you actually, sometimes play better when you're angry. When I think of Michael Jordan playing basketball, that guy was he was a great competitor. But he looked like he had a mat on most of the time. Sure. He was like getting after it. He wanted to beat the other guy, and it was serious business. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you got to be a little angry, to want to, beat the person that you're playing against in a very professional way. I'm not saying that, but it's just a mindset. It's a part of mindset, just like respect. We talk about respect all the time, but do you really respect somebody you don't have a little bit of fear for? I was scared to death of my dad. I respected him, but I was scared to death because I knew it was going to happen if I didn't do what was right. So there has to be a little bit of that too. But I think this all sets up a sort of a psychological disposition where, you got to have the right mindset. And being a little bit angry, wanting to try to prove something, I don't think that's a bad motivator. And I think a lot of these guys that, you read about, like Michael Jordan, he's still mad because he got cut in the 9th grade. That's 25 years ago. All right, but he's still trying to prove that he's the best there is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but that comes from within the player. That doesn't come from what's on the internet or what somebody writes in the paper or what somebody's opinion is. You either got that or you don't. You either have it or you don't. And if our players have it, they're going to say, that's enough. Say, that's enough? All right, then you're ready to change and do the things you have to do to, get better and do the things you have to do. And that's certainly what we want them to do.
Can I ask a question here, Chris?
Sure.
So I'm on social media, and by the grace of God, you're not. But I deal with three kinds of people when I'm on social media: trolls, haters, and know-it-alls. It's brutal. People are just mad. And you're not on the Twitter or the face bag, but your players are on the talk and the gram, and they see this stuff. It
Right.
can crawl up in your head. And for me, as an older guy, it can be hard. I cannot imagine what it's like to be 18, 19, 20, 21. How do you talk to your players about the negative feedback and these haters and the vitriol that they get on social media?
Well, I've been really doing a lot of thinking about this. because I had a difficult time figuring out why our players were, when our whole mode of operation going into the game is play for 6 seconds, focus on what's in front of you, don't let any external factors, what anybody says, what anybody does, the crowd, none of that has anything to do with how you play. I want you to focus one play at a time like it has a history and life of its own, and do it for 60 minutes in the game, and just have fun doing that. That was the whole emphasis. And we get there and we're full of anxiety, and I think some of that comes from external factors, because it's like you say, people are on the internet and they get affected by what other people think and say. That's how they get their feedback. I love the players on our team who want to be good because they want to be good. And they don't play the game for the attention they get. They play because they want to be the best that they can be, and that comes from within them. They don't need any external factors to motivate them one way or the other, or to reinforce what they did one way or the other. But I'm sorry to say, everybody's not that way. And I think some of this feedback that we're talking about creates a little bit of a negative attitude, which creates a little bit of anxiety, which anxiety is not good for positive performance. I mean, it's just not. I learned that when I was in graduate school. That was a long time ago, maybe 45, 50 years ago, that high achievement motivation and low anxiety is the best way to have the best performance. So, and we just seem to have a lot of that, and it's kept me up a lot at night this week, trying to figure that out. I've even talked to the leadership group on the team. I talked to some players on the team, and they wanted to so bad, maybe it was too bad.
Coach Nick Saban with us in the house here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill. If you've got a question for the coach, just give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, 877-202-BAMA. We're back. More from James Spann as well from ABC 3340 on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
They'll get to the 43-yard line. It'll be fourth down from right there. Jalen Wright got to carry.
No hesitation.
They're going to go for it. They didn't make it earlier on fourth down. They're going to bring everybody in on fourth down and about 2.5 for 3. They'll swing it out. Catch is made. Branch delivers the hit. He got help, and he's going down. Jacob Warren brings him down, or gets brought down by the Bama D, and the Crimson Tide, the yard marker says third down. That was wrong. That was fourth down, was it not? Hang on, the officials are talking about it now. That should have been fourth down. It's Alabama football, but they didn't change the marker on the field.
A confusing one, but a highlight nonetheless. Presented by Yellowhammer Brewing Company, brewed locally in Alabama and served to fans across the Southeast. Chris Stewart back with you here on Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show. James Spann from ABC 3340, longtime meteorologist, kind enough to join us as the media guest tonight. Coach Nick Saban here. Coach, I know you don't hear any of it, but John Parker Wilson, normally the color analyst on the radio broadcast, your former quarterback, does a fantastic job. He had to be away last week, so we just brought in another All-American captain, Barrett Jones, did the color. Fantastic to work with. I'm really fortunate to get to work with some great guys on our network, but two of your former players right there, along with Christian Miller and Corey Reamer, who've been on the sidelines at times as well.
Well, you're talking about some really high-quality, high-character guys. Barrett Jones won the Campbell Award, which is one of the most prestigious awards anybody can win. It's like the Heisman Trophy academically. He also won the Outland Trophy in the same year, which is, just a significant, great accomplishment. And what a good person. Was a great leader on the team, very bright. I think he had a 4-point here the whole time he was here. So we've had some great character quality people in our program, and that's why the culture of this program has been what it's been for so long. And that's a real challenge for all of us to try to, maintain that culture and continue to build on it in the future. And it's guys like that that made it happen.
Coach, let's give you the first question from the Nick Saban Show thread on AL.com. It's from Wayne down in Fairhope. He says, hey, Coach, the Mississippi State quarterback leads the SEC in passing yards, but they do not have a single receiver in the top 10 for receptions. Is this typical of a Mike Leach offense to spread out the catches the way they are right now? Roll Tide.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical of, first of all, they play 4 wide receivers most of the time. That's probably 95% of the game, and they're rotating a few guys in there, so they probably play 6 guys. And they spread the ball all over the field, as well as the backs. And, you know, this is a well-conceived spread-type offense that's different than any offense that you're going to play against, and it's very quarterback-oriented completely. His decision-making, his judgment based on the leverage you have in the secondary, all those things really matter a lot. But, you know, Will Rogers is really, really good at it. He's really accurate with the ball. He makes quick decisions, and it's going to be a real challenging game for us and a real test for us, you know, on defense.
Coach, we've got a young man here in the audience that has a question for you. Go ahead, sir. Say your name and then your question, please.
My name is Jonathan Loria. And, hey, Coach, I had a question. I know there's a lot of conversation going on about last week's game against Tennessee. But going into this week's game against Mississippi State, what challenges do you expect to face against them?
Well, Mississippi State's 5-2. They've got a very, very good team. They've got like 8 or 9 starters back on offense, 8 or 9 starters back on defense. And their defense, first of all, is physical, aggressive, ball hawking, man. They've got more turnovers, I think, than anybody in the SEC. Between interceptions, they're very aggressive in terms of their style of play, in terms of how much they pressure the quarterback, how much they blitz. Give you a lot of negative plays in the run game. So that's going to be a real challenge in and of itself. And they've got good players. Offensively, you know, they're one of the best passing teams in the country relative to their statistics. And I think all their receivers are really, really good. And I think they use them all, feature them in a way that suits their talents. And the quarterback makes it go for them. And they got a couple pretty good runners, even though they don't run the ball much. You know, they're pretty good, you know, in the running game. So this is really a good team, you know, all the way around. So it's going to be a really challenging game for us.
Coach, let's go back to the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. And Chris down in Red Bay has a question for you. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you so much, Chris. And, Chris, I want to say you're doing a great job filling in for Eli, and we appreciate you so much doing such a great job for us.
Thank you, sir.
Well, Coach, glad to get a chance to talk to you. My question is about this air raid. What makes it so difficult to defend this air raid? Is it the concepts, the routes? What makes it so difficult that you can just see Coach Leach on the sideline with just a small sheet of paper and he can light up a scoreboard?
Yeah. Well, as I said before, they have 4 wideouts in the game at the same time, which, you know, can cause some mismatches. Does a good job of moving people around to create, you know, bunches and stacks in different ways, which makes you try to adjust, you know, coverages in some kind of way. But the real thing is your players eventually have to be able to cover their players. They have some really good concepts in the passing game, but they really kind of change the formations, but the passing concepts are relatively the same. I mean, there's quite a few of them. But if you're really, I think this is one of the most important things when you play a team like this. You have to understand their offense like they understand it. Because you're going to get certain routes in certain formations, you're going to get certain routes in certain receiver locations, and anticipating what's going to happen in those situations is going to help you cover what they do. So, but the concept of it is they spread you out. They look at what kind of leverage that you're playing in the secondary, whether you're outside technique, inside technique, playing split safeties, got a middle of the field coverage, whatever it is. And they have so much experience in this offensive system, they know exactly, you know, how to take advantage of whatever you're playing. And I think that's what makes it difficult, you know, to defend. So, and you got to mix it up. You got to do a lot of things on defense. And, you know, our players are going to have to do a really good job of executing together as a team because you got to affect the quarterback with the pass rush, make him get the ball out of his hands quickly. As well as being able to cover people down the field. So this is a challenge. It really is. And last couple of years, you know, we've done a decent job against them. But, you know, that won't have any impact on how we do against this team this year. They've got really good players. The quarterback's got more experience, and he's playing extremely well.
I got to ask a weather question. Can I do that? Let's go back to weather, all right?
You got it.
Yeah.
So, Coach, the one game that you coached, the most miserable, nasty weather, the worst game ever in terms of weather that you coached, which one? I've seen you in some pretty rotten weather.
Yeah, well, it was probably when I was in the NFL, coaching at the Houston Oilers. We played the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati, and it was like 25 below zero.
Oh, goodness gracious! How do you
And
how do you play football?
We had hunting gear on. I mean, hunting boots, and I was in the press box, and there was no heater in the press box. And
Wow.
Needless to say, we were behind. Now, our guys from Houston, it was 80 when we left Houston. All right, so we got there. We couldn't get them to go out to the locker room for pregame warm-up. All right, so needless to say, I remember it was 28-0 at the end of the first quarter.
Oh, goodness gracious!
And Jerry Glanville was the head coach, and I was on the phone with him, and I said, 28 times 4. That's a bad score. We need to get this. we need to get this turned around quick.
Wow.
112-0. Whew.
Goodness gracious.
But it was bad. We also played Buffalo in the playoffs one year, where there was probably up at Buffalo when Jim Kelly was playing, Bruce Smith and that group, and there was about 2 feet of snow on the ground. It was about 10 degrees, and you get some really tough games in the NFL because you got to play up north. In the SEC, we haven't had a whole lot of that.
So let me ask you this. I know you got to go here. I could ask weather questions all night. A lightning delay. This is new. In fact, the last time I was on the radio with 3 guys was in the Atlanta SEC basketball tournament when we had a tornado come through. But the lightning delay, the rule is 8 miles, and that stops the game. Do you consider that an advantage or a disadvantage if a game is interrupted by a lightning delay?
Well, I don't really. I think the thing that we try to focus on is how do we manage that logistically if that happens. And, we had one of these when we played Missouri. It's probably been, I don't know, 6, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
Eddie
remember
Lacy
well.
was playing. Yeah. And it was like an hour and a half.
Right.
But, we had the players go in the locker room, and we actually sat them as if it was halftime and went over everything that had happened in the game. Every play, every formation that had been in, every adjustment we had to make, every offensive play, defensive play. So we kept the players engaged, the whole time.
Right.
And then we would give them a little break, and then we would bring them back and, have another meeting. So we're trying to keep them mentally engaged the best we could. I think when you don't do things like that and you just let guys go loiter around for an hour and a half, it's hard to get them back.
Right.
It's hard to get them back. So, but there's some things you just can't control, and the weather is one of them.
That's true.
So I've never ever let the weather be an impact or affect how we played in a game, or if it interrupted a game, how it affected or impacted players, and try to do it by the logistics that you keep everybody engaged in if there is a delay.
Coach, let's work one more call in real quick before the break. Steve is down in Pace, Florida. Steve, you're on next with Coach.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good, buddy.
Good.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Hey, Coach, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, man.
Good. Mr. Spann, it's so good to see you on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Glad to be
being
here.
there.
It's my pleasure.
My question to you, Coach, tonight is, with all the defensive plays that are going on within a game, is there anybody that you've noticed on your team that reminds you of when you played defensive back at Kent State at any time, or what? I don't know, but.
Well, first of all, I wasn't good enough to play at Alabama. All right, and if there's anybody on our team that reminds me of me, I hope they don't get to play. Because we might be in trouble. But it was such a different game then. I mean, for some of you folks that are, played football 20, 25, 30 years ago, it was I formation. There were 2 wideouts in the game. It was wad ball. Everybody was running lead draw and power and sweeps, and Tennessee got in what looked like an I formation last week on the goal line, and our players actually did not know what to do.
Wow.
They had never seen it.
That's old school.
Never seen it.
It's totally old school.
So the game has just changed so much, and the game now is spread out. And if you notice last week's game, their receivers are like 2 yards from the boundary, all right, and 35 yards away is actually the ball and the center and the rest of the formation. And you got to put people out there to guard those guys, and that just you got a lot of people covering lots of grass.
Right.
But right here is where the ball's getting run, and they're all out there. So, but anyway, the game has just changed dramatically, and I think for the good, it's probably more exciting to watch. Fans probably enjoy it more. There's a lot more passing. I remember when I was in the NFL with Belichick in like the early 90s, like I think it was 43% of the plays were passes. Now it's like 63% of the plays in the NFL are passes. So, the game has just changed so dramatically, so much more quarterback oriented, and I think that's why the teams that have a good quarterback have a real chance to have success.
More with Coach Nick Saban and James Spann from ABC 3340 when we come back here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
4th and goal from outside the 1. Young dropping back, looking, stepping up, throwing, got him, touchdown, lot 2. Alabama 2 within 1.
Welcome back, everybody. Great to have you with us here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill. And this segment of the Nick Saban Show is brought to you by Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. With zero sugar and refreshingly delicious, is Coca-Cola Zero Sugar the best Coke ever? Well, find out for yourself. James Spann from ABC 3340 is our media guest tonight here on the Nick Saban Show. I'm Chris Stewart, filling in for Eli Gold. And Coach Saban, we've got our second question from the Nick Saban Show thread at AL.com. That question is from Jerry in Collierville, Tennessee. And Jerry says, hey, Coach, can you comment on the development of KoolAid as a second-year player? Thank you, and roll tide. Again, that's from Jerry.
Yeah, KoolAid's played really well for us, all year long. I think his consistency and performance has been one of the better guys on defense, and he hasn't given up a lot of explosive plays. Did give up one at the end of the game, the other day on a mental error. But those are the kind of things that, when you physically get beat, if you could just limit how many times you physically got beat in a game by playing the right technique, having the right alignment, understanding what your responsibility is, preparing yourself well through the course of the week of practice, and then you only got beat physically because the guy was faster than you or you couldn't cover him or whatever. And for the most part, KoolAid does a really, really good job of that. So, and he had a big interception at the end of the game. It's just unfortunate that we got pass interference on the play or whatever, but anyway, I'm really pleased with him. He's a really good competitor. He's a bright guy, and really does a nice job for us and affects other players on the team in a really positive way.
Coach, let's go back to the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, and Matt is in Jacksonville, Alabama. Go ahead with your question for Coach. Matt.
Hey, Coach, how are you tonight, sir?
He's asking how you doing tonight, Coach.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome, Coach. I just wanted to ask, the different teams in the offense, how do we go in this week handling, the tight line on offense and how their blocking strategy is and them running the ball for consistent yards week after week?
You're talking about our offense or
theirs?
Their offense?
How do you defend theirs?
Yeah. Well, I think the way you have to defend their offense is you have to do a multitude of things on defense. You got to be willing to, rush 3 guys, rush 4 guys, rush 5 guys, try to give them different looks. Try to make sure that you stay sound in the run game while you do that, because they will take advantage of if you get too soft in the coverage, they'll take advantage and run the ball. And I think they're probably doing that a little bit better this year than maybe even in past years of taking advantage of some of those situations. So, but everybody's got to play responsibility football, run and pass. we'll end up playing with 6 defensive backs in the game almost the whole game. When we played against the run and shoot in the NFL, when Houston used to run the run and shoot, we always had to play with 6 defensive backs the whole game. Well, those guys, 2 of them are like outside linebackers, even though they're defensive backs when it comes to the running plays. So they got to do a good job of reading run pass. They do a good job of trying to create run pass conflicts, which make it hard for those guys to cover and play the run. All right, so that's what makes it challenging. The more people spread you out, the more they're making you defend 53 yards wide, and also the vertical field position of being able to throw the ball down the field. That's what makes this a challenging offense. That's what makes our offense challenging, because we have the ability to do that. But you got to have a really good quarterback to do it, because it takes a lot more to execute in the passing game, pass protection-wise, as well as route running, throwing, and catching on a consistent basis. It takes a lot more to do that than it does to just be able to run the ball. So people that have this kind of offense have the opportunity to have success. And if they get hot on you, which you got to do a good job on defense of playing with, and you got to play this kind of offense with toughness. You got to be able to tackle well in space. You got to be able to knock back people. You got to be able to, tomahawk the ball and try to get balls out and create turnovers. So there's a lot of things that go into trying to stop this offense. But they can nickel-dime you to death with short passes, but they can also hit the ball down the field on you, and you've got to do a good job in both areas.
Coach, let's go to Florence, Alabama. Harrison, you're next on with Coach Saban.
Good evening, Chris. Coach, it's good to be talking to you again. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just had a kind of a general question about game prep. I've watched your Monday press conferences, and you always give some reflections about the game a couple of days ago, but then you also, talk about some key players and some key things that our upcoming opponent does. And I was just wanting to know how much game film and how many things do you have to look over before you really feel comfortable in saying, hey, this is what the team does well, and how do you prepare your players for that? Like, how much preparation goes into feeling comfortable with what the other team is going to be doing the next week?
Oh, boy. We start at 12 o'clock noon on Sunday. I'm talking about as a coaching staff. We've already has the film graded of the previous game, so you have to do that before 12 o'clock. We go over it on offense, we go over on defense, we go over on special teams. So probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll start watching the other team. And I will watch the other team for 6 hours, probably till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Then the first thing I do is meet with the defense, decide what we're going to do in Monday practice, which is abbreviated practice, but we still try to put in the basic plan and adjustments that we would do in our basic coverages or whatever. The next day, I actually start with the defense, look at special teams, meet with special teams, start watching the offense, and I actually meet with the offense on Tuesday morning after watching probably 2 or 3 hours of their defense. So, and then we watch everything situationally. All right, so each day, like on Monday is basically special teams game plan. On Tuesday, we do 1st and 10, second long, goal line, and short yardage. So I'm going to look at all the second and long plays. I'm going to look at goal line and short yardage and what they do in those, and we're going to install a plan on both sides of the ball of what we're going to do in those days. On Wednesday, so on Tuesday night, we look at practice film, but we look at third down. What's the team do on third down? And all the passes. If they've had 32 third downs in the last 4 games or whatever, we look at every one of them. We have all the passes drawn up, what's the best coverages to play, how we match the patterns, how we got to adjust to the formations. And we do red area. So what do they do inside the 20-yard line? And then the next day we do 2-minute and 2-point plays. Like this morning we did 2-minute and 2-point plays. So, and then we're watching all the practice film in between doing all these things as well. So the first thing we do when we come off the practice field is we go in and watch the practice film of that day. And that probably takes 2.5, maybe 3 hours. So how much preparation is there? Now the difference in college than like coaching in the NFL is we only have 20 hours a week with our players. That's the game, that's practice, and that's the meetings. So our meeting with the players every day is 15 minutes on special teams and an hour and 5 minutes on offense and defense. So we have to really be well organized in presentation to be able to cut out the plays that we only show them this is what they need to see and this is what we need to show them each day. And that's why we sort of segment it, through the week. So, boy, I can't tell you how many hours we spend in terms of preparation. And sometimes it's more difficult based on who you're playing and what they do. But I have a book, okay? And when I look at the book, it's coordinated with the film. So here's the formation, here's the play that they run, here's the defense that they run, here's how they adjust the coverage. So I have a book, so when I watch the film, I'm looking at a picture and the film at the same time. So I can make notes, as I go through. So, and then, you got to spend time preparing the presentation that you're going to make to the players. That's got to be really well organized because you got a limited amount of time to do it. And they got a limited attention span for the most part, so you got to make sure what you're doing is keeping their attention. So, and then we go through walkthrough, then we teach them how to do it in individual on the field, then we have a group period where we're doing it, and we do it as a team. So that's kind of how we teach.
It's one of the reasons we love this show. Great stuff from Coach Nick Saban. We're back with more in just a moment here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
So 2nd and 8 balls from their own 16. They
Ball down.
on the deck, picked up Bama, touchdown, Dallas Turner, scoop and score, an assist from Barrett Jones as Alabama gets the takeaway and regains the lead. Wow.
Scoop and score, very fitting with what just transpired here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill. The Nick Saban Show is presented by Alpha Insurance. For auto, home, and life insurance, call Alpha. Real quickly, James Spann, you've got one final question for Coach.
So, Coach, we're both older guys. We just celebrated a birthday here, all right?
Yeah.
So this is the one question that gets on my nerves. People ask me this all the time. When are you going to retire? What's the matter with you? I'm just getting started. I feel better now than I felt when I was 30 years old. I'm energized. I love what I do. I can't wait to come to work every single day. Does that get on your nerves when people say, Coach, when are you going to retire?
Yeah, well, I get asked that a lot, especially by recruits and their families.
Yeah.
So, but I feel the same way. I get concerned, and you've heard me say this before, like, what are you going to do if you do? You enjoy what you're doing now. You enjoy the grind. I kind of enjoy, people always ask me how you keep going. I kind of enjoy the grind of the week and preparing for the game, getting ready for the game, setting up the game plan, doing all that, just as much as the game itself.
Right.
So, I can't answer that. I really can't. And, I certainly would never want to ride the program down if I didn't feel like I was doing a good job or whatever. And if we don't start playing better, I was going to see if you had any openings over at your place.
Yeah,
if you
no
needed an
problem.
assistant.
Come on. He's a weather dweeb. I know he'd do good.
I watch the Weather Channel, so I feel like I'm an expert after all these years.
You're in. You're all in. But no. And here's the other question. So the other thing, I'm not good at anything I do, but I will work harder than anybody else except you to accomplish a goal. I want to talk about time management because it's my biggest struggle in life. You just mentioned what you do in a week. That's staggering.
Right.
That's staggering. You've been married for how long?
50 years, 51 in December.
Oh, boy, you put that man on the spot in a bad way right there.
So,
wow.
So,
I got it right.
I've been married to Miss Karen for 41 years, and time management is a big struggle. How do you deal with that in your priorities in life?
Well, during football season,
I need some advice is what I need.
Actually, there is only one priority, during football season. I come home on Wednesday night. That's the only night of the week that I eat at home. It's the only night that Terry cooks and we eat together all week long. Sometimes the kids come over. Most of the time they come to the games. So my mom comes to the game, so I see them after the game. Get to spend some time if we have a day game. Get to spend very little time if we have a night game. So really, there isn't it's almost like you got to be totally committed to what you're doing during the season. Now, what I've learned to do through the years is do a better job of time management in the off season, and segment things. And, we've got little blocks where we take some time off, whether it's right after recruiting, maybe spring break, a couple of weeks in the summer, so that you're not just completely burnt out all the time in terms of what you're doing. So, and I've learned how to do that better. And I think family has helped me, do that, because I enjoy so much, being with Miss Terry. I enjoy so much being with our kids and our grandkids, and that's helped, a lot.
Coach, you're going to coach your grandson in football? You're going to coach him in youth football?
He's 2.5 now.
No. But you blink and he'll be playing youth football.
Yeah, I know. He hits every ball there is now. Hockey puck, wiffle ball, golf ball at 2.5.
I like it.
He can hit it. So, but, yeah, I'd love to coach him.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
That'd be good stuff. Coach, the show presented by Alpha Insurance for auto, home, and life insurance. We invite everybody to call Alpha, and we invite them to listen up right now as the final word from Coach Saban is presented by Mercedes-Benz.
Well, one thing I'd like to say before I get out of here and do the final word thing is, I appreciate the birthday cake. I appreciate and have a lot of gratitude for people who care enough to do things for me. It's been a great life for us. We've been blessed, and certainly have a lot of gratitude for all the blessings that we have. And I hope everyone out there takes the time to think about all you have, because a lot of times we spend most of our time thinking about what we don't have, or what we want, or what we're trying to get, or whatever. So I think sometimes, if you have gratitude, it's pretty hard to be depressed. It's pretty hard to feel bad because you think about the things you have. I remember, I told the team when Derrick Henry was playing here, we had the motto that year, glad to be here. And every day in flex, I'd go on the field sometime. I was tired. I didn't feel like, maybe showing the kind of energy I needed to show. And I'd walk past Derrick Henry and he'd say, glad to be here, Coach. Yep. And if you say that to yourself, it makes you think in a positive way. And I think that's something good for everybody. And the other thing I'd like to say is James here. There are people who do a great job in their profession. And he says that he's a hard worker, and it shows, because if there's anybody that we're going to listen to when we have any issues with the weather, it's what he says, because he has been the most consistent professionally at what he does of anybody that I know. And I'm always interested in the weather. And you do a great job.
You got a place on my staff anytime you want, Coach. Thank you. You're very kind.
There's an old saying that people say sometimes, don't sweat the small stuff. But I think attention to detail and sweating the small stuff is really what our team needs to do better. Too many penalties, eliminate bad plays, win this play, focus on this play, win this play, do simple better. Don't make things so complicated. Just focus on, here's my alignment, here's my responsibility, here's my technique, and do that one play at a time. I think, sometimes you get too result-oriented. When you get result-oriented, you're worried about what you're going to score in golf, or what are we going to win the game, rather than focusing on the process of what you actually have to do. And be proactive in how you prepare to do that, so that when you get to the point where you're competing in the game or doing whatever you do, you're ready to do it and you're confident. And because pressure, which comes from not knowing what you're supposed to do. You're not confident in what you're supposed to do. You don't feel good about what you're supposed to do, and that creates anxiety. So I think that's what our players need to do. I think that the fans, this is homecoming. This is a great time traditionally for a lot of people to come back and, sort of embrace old relationships and, some of the thoughts that they have about when they went to school here and all that, and how much passion they have for Alabama football. And we certainly want to play well. But I do think that our fans have a lot to do with making our players feel appreciated for the hard work that they do. And you do a lot to help them stay in the right psychological disposition so that they can gain confidence. Because momentum, psychological momentum, is really important in competition. And I think that our fans, our stadium really helps us do that well. And I think if we can do that well at home, maybe we can learn how to play well on the road. So I hope we have a great stadium, a great atmosphere, and I hope you all continue to support our players in a really positive way. Thank you.
Coach, thank you. Best of luck this weekend.
All right, thank you.
Coach Nick Saban here with his final word. Hey, Coach, the Nick Saban Show are presented by Alpha Insurance. Protect your cars, home, life, and business with Alpha. Get a quote or find a local agent at alphainsurance.com.